Let's take a look at the opening description that we get in Volume 1 of Ta-Nehisi Coates' A Nation Under Our Feet, the first graphic novel version of his entry into the Black Panther universe. And here we see Black Panther is the ancestral ceremonial title of T'Challa, the king of Wakanda. T'Challa splits his time between protecting his kingdom with the aid of his elite female royal guard, the Dora Milaje, and helping protect the entire world as a member of superhero teams such as the Avengers and the Ultimates. Now, if you're like me, this last bit of information might have just flown right by you. I, for instance, haven't kept up on comic book history at all and don't even know who the Avengers are. I'm starting to learn this now as I've gone back through some of the back issues and so on. But this is one place where this work interests me especially, because Coates is so good at drawing together such a wide range of background information that very few readers would be able to put together. So this is one of the things I find challenging and exciting about this particular instance of so-called popular culture, because Coates brings in not only his lifelong experience as a comic book geek, someone who spent quite a bit of time in this alternate universe and the various alternate universes within that, which actually plays an important role in some of the previous Black Panther series before Coates got into it. But also we'll see this is important for the background of the movie Black Panther, because this is part of the whole Marvel series of superheroes, Avengers, and so on. So if we move on to the middle paragraph of that opening description we have in Volume 1, we read, "The African nation Wakanda is the most technologically advanced society on the globe." Now here, Coates is picking up on the long-standing theme right from the first issue, which we get in the end of Volume 1, which is very nice, of the idea that the mysterious, hidden, esoteric nation of Wakanda is actually the most technologically advanced society on the globe. This is a very nice play on the usual reversed version according to Western dominance, with the sense that the West is the one that's in technological control, is the most advanced society, and so on. And here, this hidden heart of darkness, as Joseph Conrad called it, is actually far more advanced in this particular version. It sits upon a large deposit of an extremely rare natural resource called vibranium. Now, this will bring us into Avatar again, and I'll talk more about this as we take a look at it in the movie, because there's a lot more happening here in terms of that, but I wanted to mention it now. This will be one of the connections between the two movies, and, well, in this case, the graphic novels that I want to point to. Wakanda long boasted of having never been conquered. Again, something extremely unheard of, in fact, not heard of at all within the African nations after the long period of Western conquest of the rest of the globe. But recent events, a biblical flood that killed thousands, a coup orchestrated by Dr. Doom, an invasion by the villain Thanos, have humbled the kingdom. Now here again, if you're not versed in the Marvel universe, then none of this makes much sense. And when I first read this, with no background in the Marvel universe at all, I had no clue what any of this was referring to. And actually, these all are referring to previous runs of comic book series that involved the Black Panther in the various universes. The Doctor Doom series, for instance. Thanos will come up in the Infinity Wars movie. I want to jump into the opening pages of issue 1 just to give you some sense of the issues that I find especially striking in Coates' view of what Black Panther represents for him, because he has said in many interviews that he is hoping that he can make the best Black Panther series that there is, and that people after him will strive to attain what he attained in this. But that aside, I'm really not interested in where he stands in terms of the comic book designers and illustrators and writers and so on in that long history, but really what are the themes that he seems to be exploring with Black Panther at the heart here. So if we take a look at the opening image, which is also the cover image, we can see Black Panther in his vibranium uniform, and behind him is Wakanda in flames. And the flags are burning, which is symbolic. Whether they actually did or not is beside the point. But we are seeing Wakanda in its current state of catastrophe, basically. And so one of the questions that Coates is asking is, what does a king have to do in moments of catastrophe, in moments where the nation is suffering various defeats that we've seen in the earlier series before Coates entered into the game, or in world events, because we need to keep in mind that Coates is not simply interested in carrying on the Black Panther comic book tradition, but making sure that the Black Panther in that tradition is speaking to real-world history as well. And if we take a look at Coates's other nonfiction books, we'll see how much he stresses the importance of finding a relationship to the power structures that define who we are and who we are not, who we can be and presumably who we can't. So if we're looking at this opening image, we see the Black Panther confronted with the tragedy, and yet here he is in a kind of heroic stance nevertheless. So if we take a look then at page 6 in there, and we have the opening tableau here with T'Challa wounded, he's bleeding from the head, and he's having to deal with the memories of the various defeats where he didn't measure up to what he had hoped he could be, both as Black Panther and as king, as savior of his nation and savior of the world at the same time, which is why he was involved with the Avengers. But ironically, his involvement with the Avengers took him away from Wakanda, and so that left him leaving the nation vulnerable. So we see confronting the father here, and he is his words in the black background with the white text. I am the orphan king who defied the blood. And the father says, you have no people, you are no longer my son. Then Namor, one of the figures who ended up bringing about the floods in Wakanda, we see him in some of the Avengers issues. Black Panther says, who defied his country? You spent your life building a perfect kingdom, and now you have been cast out. And then the Dora Milaje, his protectors, and was divided from you. You have lost your way, my king. So he is confronted on many sides with his failures. So where can he go from here? If we turn the page, we then see him being told by his people, you have lost your soul. And here he is at the Great Mound, the site of the vibranium mines. And here Coates is tapping into, again, not simply a Black Panther theme, but a long theme involving not just imperialism in its larger global sense, but power plays within Africa itself, but then exploited heavily, continuing to be so, by imperialist intervention in Africa. So, ironically, here we have the king of the African nation, Wakanda, in the kind of role of the tyrant owner, the master of the mine, keeping the miners enslaved with the very power that the vibranium gives them in the weapons here. I came here to praise the heart of my country, the vibranium miners of the Great Mound, for I am their king, and I love them as the father loves the child. But one of the things he's going to have to confront is exactly this kind of paternalistic relationship that he has inherited as king, as the father of the kingdom, and yet allow the kingdom to become a nation in a much more modern sense of a nation of free peoples able to determine themselves. So this is a question of self-determination. But among my children, all I found was hate. The hate spread. And here we have, again, the vibranium weapon being used against the peoples in this very degrading way. And nevertheless, Black Panther is called on to intervene, and so there is war. Now, in the top panel of the following page, the hate did not rise on its own. We see Zenzi at the center of the image, and she truly is at the center of this rebellion here. She becomes the mastermind, along with Tetu, in bringing the people together to oppose this catastrophic realm of a catastrophic king. Deceivers are loose in my kingdom. Now, the question of whether they are deceivers, I think, is an important one, and I'm not really I don't have a sense that Coates has yet really answered this for himself about, who are the deceivers and who are the deceived. The people represent a liberation movement, a very important theme in African history, and so the idea that the monarch is losing control and the deceivers are at the root of that seems to go against many of the things that Coates would otherwise want for people searching for their own self-definition. And so the hate spreads. Death to tyrants, a throne for Wakandans. Wakandans as a people, no one man, as they say later, both in the paternalistic sense of the king over the people, but also the patriarchal sense of the male dominant figure in the father figure role over the rest of the people and the women in particular. Consuming the body of the nation, dividing me from my very blood, and now they call me Haramufal, the orphan king. But I have not forgotten my name, Damisasarki, the panther. My name is my nature. I can track a body through wind and rain, for I track not the body, but the soul within. And here we're seeing this kind of esoteric angle that, as you've seen in my responses to our other works, always intrigues me, that the Black Panther's powers of, we could say telepathy, but it's not strictly telepathy because it's not on the mental level. He's seeing into the nature of the people themselves in ways that the average person is not able to. But the deceiver's scent has gone stale. And the deceiver, we assume, is Zenzi here. And Zenzi is aware of this supernatural, we could say, power, the paranormal power that the Black Panther has. Her power fades. Another key character in Black Panther is T'Challa's sister Shuri. In the opening preface to issue number 1, we're told that Shuri had been ruling as both Queen and Black Panther in his absence, but she died defending Wakanda against Thanos' army. At the close of issue number 1, we see her when T'Challa goes to Necropolis, the city of the dead, where he is attempting to find a way to bring his sister back to the world of the living through some futuristic DNA manipulation. And then at the close of issue number 2, we see him return to this task, where he says, "By the hand of Thane we shackled the Black Order. They escaped, shattered a nation. By a counterfeit power the prisoner became the jailer, and Queen Shuri did not live, and Queen Shuri did not die." The scene then cuts to the mystical dimension known as the Jaliyah, the plane of Wakandan memory. This is the equivalent of the plane of the dead in the movie Avatar that can be contacted via the Sahelu link with the Tree of Souls. The griot spirit, appearing as Shuri's mother, informs her that she is now home. Then in issue number 3, we witness the mentoring process that Shuri undergoes through the work of the Ramonda griot. The griot explains, "I do not mock you, daughter, but whatever you were before, you have become lost, as were the men who ruled before you. You have forgotten the old ways, my queen. You have lost your soul. Once the Black Order sought to forever banish you, but they knew not your destination. They knew nothing of the Jalea. Here we will arm you, not with the spear, but with the drum, for it is the drum that carries the greatest power of all." And what is that, mother? The power of memory, daughter, the power of song. Throughout issue number 8, which brings volume 2 to a close, we witness the completion of Shuri's initiation at the hands of the griot, and the dimensional shifting work of T'Challa and Eden as they portal their way into the Jalea in order to bring the transformed Shuri back to Wakanda, where she can join in the epic battle. Other key characters in the Black Panther story are the warrior lovers Io and Aneka. Originally members of T'Challa's elite royal guard, known as the Dora Milaje, in the midst of the chaos in Wakanda and T'Challa's apparent turn to despotism, Io and Aneka form a rebel army now known as the Midnight Angels, who aid the people in their battle against the chains of brutal monarchy. Aneka has been captured and condemned to be executed as a traitor by Queen Ramonda, but Io smashes through the prison security and liberates her love. They then continue their work as liberators of the people. Issue number 10 opens with Shuri's confrontation with Io and Aneka. Shuri chastises them as fallen traitors who have forsaken their oaths to the nation and to the chain of Black Panthers, including Shuri herself. She convinces the Midnight Angels to let go of their rebellion and join with T'Challa and the others as they fight to save Wakanda. She says, "The proposition I offer is simple. Honor your pledge to guard the new nation, or honor your word to those who will, soon enough, war against it." And finally, I want to take a look at perhaps the most personalized character in the book in terms of Coates' own background, and that is the rebellious, longtime professor and inspiration to independent thinkers in Wakanda, Changamire. According to the rebel team of Zenzi and Tetu, Changamire was the mastermind of all philosophies of liberation from monarchy and despotism, and this is the charge that Ramonda brings against him time and time again. In issue number 2, we see Changamire teaching a class on John Locke's second treatise on civil government, and Locke says, as being read by Changamire, "The injury and the crime is equal, whether committed by the wearer of a crown or some petty villain. Great robbers punish the little ones to keep them in their obedience, but the great ones are rewarded with laurels and triumphs. Because they are too big for the weak hands of justice in this world, and have the power in their possession which should punish offenders. What is my remedy against the robber who so broke into my house?" And this is certainly one of Coates's primary statements in relation to the United States as we know it today, where the great robbers are getting off scot-free while the minor ones are spending lifetime in prison or shot in the streets by the police. And then, in a great scene in issue number 4, we find Ramonda visiting Changamire in hopes of persuading him to convince his former students to return to the fold of faithful Wakandans. We find Changamire in his library, and if we look closely, we can read the titles of the books on his shelves. The most prominent title over his shoulder is Stephen Hahn's Great History of African American Politicization, A Nation Under Our Feet, which, at least in title, is the inspiration for this novel and Coates' entry into the world of the Black Panther. We also see Frantz Fanon's The Wretched of the Earth, the great anti-colonial manifesto study that inspired so many Third World liberation movements. Other titles include James Baldwin's The Fire Next Time, Eric Williams's Capitalism and Slavery, and interestingly, Barbara Tuchman's A Distant Mirror, a history of misery and suffering of the common people at the hands of the church in medieval Europe. And then, late in issue number 10, Changameyer and T'Challa carry on a conversation concerning the power of books in the political education and transformation of a nation. Here, we finally find a direct statement referencing the title of Coates' novel, A Nation Under Our Feet. I have read a good deal of your work. Indeed, I have thought of little else over the past few weeks. To defeat an enemy, you have to understand him first. Yes, that is how it began. What if I told you that I never wanted to be a king? I would tell you that I am unsurprised. And why would you say that? Men who wish to be kings have almost never considered their request. Who, in full knowledge, would wish to hold a country on their shoulders? Who, in full sanity, would try to hold a nation under their feet? The tea's up. I'm not trying to do anything. I did not ask to be king. That book you hold, American Slavery, American Freedom, it is important. Do you know it? No. A pity. Your father did a lot for Wakanda's educational system, but he did not have much use for the humanities. We are a country of crafters and warriors, but not of thinkers? The book. Right. If you studied more, you would find that your dilemma is not an original one. That book chronicles the attempt to raise an entire race of kings, and every year, thousands of them were born and charged with keeping thousands more underfoot. So now we get a sense of the title, A Nation Under Our Feet, as in terms of this Black Panther novel, being a reference to the difficulty that a monarch has in allowing his own people, or her own people, because Shuri was in this position as well, to rule over them while allowing them self-determination and freedom.